Breaking news, 2 explosions at the White House, and Barack Obama has been injured. This tweet was retweeted 4,000 times in less than 5 minutes.
We've been grappling in India with a terrible phenomenon called WhatsApp killings. Over 33 people have died because they have been killed by rampaging mobs on the suspicion of being child kidnappers over rumors spread on social media platforms like Facebook.
Pope Francis shocks world, endorses Donald Trump for president. Here's a shocker. According to this highly reputable looking website, the Vatican had decided enough was enough over the course of the 2016 election. His Holiness the Pope decided to break with centuries of precedent, reach into US electoral politics and endorse one candidate over another. This was on Facebook the most engaged and shared story of the 2016 election. It received almost 1 million shares.
You are fake news.
It used to be news, now it's opinions.
Answer is, I worry that the fake news is not under control. And I do worry about, outside forces using it to manipulate people's thoughts.
I want you all to know that we are fighting the fake news. It's fake, phony, fake.
Apple CEO Tim Cook says the United States should worry about the impact of fake news on the 2020 election.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
Entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time, even if they would never say those things. But someone else would. Someone like Jordan Peele.
Tell you a story about a girl, but I can't tell you her real name. So let's just call her Hadiza. Hadiza is 20. She's shy, but she has a beautiful smile that lights up her face. But she's in constant pain, and she will likely be on medication for the rest of her life. Do you want to know why? Hadiza is a Chibok girl. And on April 14, 2014, she was kidnapped by Boko Haram terrorists. She managed to escape, though, by jumping off the truck that was carrying the girls. But when she landed, she broke both her legs, and she had to crawl on her tummy to hide in the bushes. She told me she was terrified that Boko Haram would come back for her. She was one of 57 girls who would escape by jumping off trucks that day. The story quite rightly caused ripples around the world. People like Michelle Obama, Malala, and others lent their voices in protest. And at about the same time, I was living in London at the time, I was sent from London to Abuja to cover the World Economic Forum that Nigeria was hosting for the first time. But when we arrived, it was clear that there was only one story in town. We put the government under pressure. We asked tough questions about what they were doing to bring these girls back. Understandably, they weren't too happy with our line of questioning. And let's just say we received our fair share of alternative facts. Influential Nigerians were telling us at the time that we were naive, we didn't understand the political situation in Nigeria. But they also told us that the story of the Chibok girls was a hoax. Sadly, this hoax narrative has persisted, And there are still people in Nigeria today who believe that the Chibok girls were never kidnapped. Yet I was talking to people like these, devastated parents who told us that on the day that Boko Haram kidnapped their daughters, they ran into the Sambisa forest after the trucks carrying their daughters. They were armed with machetes, but they were forced to turn back because Boko Haram had guns. For 2 years, inevitably, the news agenda moved on, and for 2 years, we didn't hear much about the Chibok girls. Everyone presumed they were dead. But in April last year, I was able to obtain this video. This is a still from the video that Boko Haram filmed as a proof of life. And through a source, I obtained this video. But before I could publish it, I had to travel to the northeast of Nigeria to talk to the parents, to verify it. I didn't have to wait too long for confirmation. One of the mothers, when she watched the video, told me that if she could have reached into the laptop and pulled out her child from the laptop, she would have done so. For those of you who are parents, like myself in the audience, you can only imagine the anguish that that mother felt.
Over 33 people have died because they have been killed by rampaging mobs on the suspicion of being child kidnappers over rumors spread on social media platforms like Facebook, WhatsApp, ShareChat, and others, which add up to something like 500 million subscribers. In Karnataka, earlier this year, a young engineer working for Accenture was driving through a village along with his friends. He was pulled out, beaten up, and killed on the suspicion of being a child kidnapper. In Assam, 2 youngsters driving in an SUV were similarly pulled out after being stopped and killed by a mob in a village on the suspicion that they were child kidnappers. India must be the only country where social media has led to rumors which have led to such brutal murders and killings. Have a close look at this video. This is the video that has perhaps led to more deaths than any other video in recent times.
Appearance on the stage that, on a scale that we never dreamt possible. Are you concerned about fake news? Are you concerned about alien individuals trying to upset people's democratic processes?
Those are things to guard against. I don't think the French election or UK election will be determined by those outside forces, but we should try and make sure that that's not happening in the future. The whole idea of how you run elections and how you raise money for elections, how you make sure the voting system's working well. It's an area for constant diligence because it plays such a central role in our democratic process.
But you take something like, for example, that there was this flash on the web on various social media sites that Pope Francis had backed President Trump. In his original run for the presidency. It absolutely wasn't true, but it became a fact for a time. How do you deal with that?
Well, people are going to have taste in terms of paying attention to reliable news sources. And the fact that we're getting a lot of our news off the internet, it's kind of a new thing.
People get all that news from the internet.
That's right, but they get some of it from reliable sources and some from unreliable sources. And I do believe they'll become more sophisticated over time. And we have to hope they'll even look at news that has viewpoints they disagree with. We don't want them off just listening to the people they already share common views with.
But you've basked in this freedom, and suddenly we're having to think about, well, is it censorship? Somehow people are going to have to combat, specifically, prevent some of this fake news and the rest of it.
It's true, along with this idea that anybody can publish, which is an overwhelmingly good thing. It's not just a few, press barons controlling what we read now. Along with that freedom has come this idea that there is a lot of incorrect information out there. And so the idea of who do we trust? Do network do we see who our friends trust? Thinking of it all as credible as what we used to read in the newspaper, that's not working.
Now, what about
user side in privacy? We're on the user side in trying to prevent fake news. And so we curate, and we've always done that. We're not an amplifier for fake news or pitting groups against one another or having porn or all this other kind of stuff. This is not what we're about, and we've never been about that.
Is Facebook an amplifier for fake news?
I think that any kind of property, if you will, that pushes news in a way that is not curated. I don't really believe personally that that AI has the power today to differentiate between what is fake and what is not. And so I worry about any property that today pushes news in a feed. And so what we do with our news product, we're not creating news, but we do pick top stories. We have people doing it. And so I do worry about the people thinking like machines, not machines thinking like people.
Do you worry about what may happen in the next presidential election?
Well, the answer is I worry that the fake news is not under control. And I do worry about outside forces using it to manipulate people's thoughts and so forth. So yes, I think we should all be concerned.
So what is the long-term effect of too much information? The polarization of the electorate? A meter-spiritness?
And false information as well, because the whole fake news thing.
Pick one. It's not just one. That's the flavor of the day. Every day is something else. People have to understand, are you using your device or is your device using you? Can you put it down? Can you turn it off?
You're talking about literally the places people get their information from.
I don't care what information. Pick one. Phone, television. It used to be news. Now it's opinion news. Oh, glasses. We have 3 experts on the right, 3 on the left. Let's discuss. Ooh, light bulbs. We have 3 experts on the right. That's not news. That's opinion news. Well, over and over and over. Cycle, 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 cycle. What is the long-term effect of too much information? If you're sitting there and you're thinking it's the gospel, what I'm saying to people is, to all of us, I'm not knocking the phone. What I'm saying is we have to understand, we have to at least ask ourselves, around the world, you here in England, wherever you are, what is it doing to us?
People have become less tolerant of just some random information that somebody writes down that they happen to know, and really more looking for what's your source for that. Is it do you have a scientific journal or a well-known newspaper and so on. And in fact, we've gotten very sophisticated in the community with all of our policies around what counts as a reliable source or not.
Can you talk me through that actually? Because one of the guiding principles, or rather what I've understood to be one of your inspirations for starting Wikipedia, is to create an environment that almost breaks down this ivory tower notion, this idea that there's a hierarchy, that anybody can contribute to knowledge. Yet what you're talking about here with this notion of reliable sources, a scientific journal, a peer-reviewed, can you talk me through that juxtaposition, that sort of, that controversy there?
I mean, it's interesting because Wikipedia in many ways does break down a lot of hierarchical assumptions that people have, but that was never the goal. It's not something I particularly care about one way or the other. What I care about is quality. It turns out that it's easier to get quality when you have more people participating, and when you judge the quality of someone's work on its own merits rather than paying too much attention to their credentials. At the same time, we really love when experts come. We really try to have an environment that's very welcoming of people who know what they're talking about. It's funny because we have this reputation for being very anti-elitist, but we're really not anti-elitist. We're actually quite snobby within the community, based on, if you know what you're talking about and you can back it up, that's honorable and that's really important to us.